Hello guys, in this video I will be ranking all of Cormac McCarthy's novels. I recently completed the last of the novels that I was missing to read, and since then I've been thinking about wanting to do this video. So in general, I think the bar for Cormac McCarthy is very high. I don't think he wrote a bad book at all. So this will start from novels that I think is good, going towards very good novels, and then ending up at top level, excellent, really mind bending novels. So without further ado, I will get right into it. So my least favorite McCarthy novel that I read is The Orchard Keeper. This was also Cormac McCarthy's first novel. It was just a book that I struggled with. I didn't fully understand it. I got frequently lost, and the characters didn't really engage me to the extent that almost all of his other novels did. It's not bad. It has some excellent prose. It has some interesting perspectives on time, and there are a few set pieces that are really well executed. It is a novel I think I will probably reread at some point. I read it relatively early on in my McCarthy sort of examination, and it's definitely one of his more difficult books. It's Faulknerian, stream of consciousness, sort of disjointed narrative. But all in all, I just didn't think that it did that much to me. So this is the worst McCarthy novel in my experience. Next up is his third novel, Child of God. This is a difficult read because of the disturbing nature of the main character, Lester Ballard. Most people that are familiar with McCarthy knows that Lester Ballard is a necrophile, a pedophile, mass murderer. This was recently turned into a movie that's not very good. The novel is interesting. It has some very good things going for it. The sort of allegory of the title, Child of God, I think is sort of Cormac McCarthy's way of either saying that there's nothing special about the condition of humanity. We are not divine or particularly praised because even Lester Ballard is a child of God, or it has potentially some other allegorical meanings. But I think it's a good story. This is probably where I think McCarthy's prose is the weakest. It's the most impressive thing about Child of God is that despite how absolutely disgusting and despicable Lester Ballard is, both physically and psychologically, you end up pitying him because he's a pitiable character. He is treated very unkindly and very unfair, and it's easy. You as the reader knows that he is a psychopathic mass murderer, but the people who treat him that way actually don't know that at this time. So I think perhaps McCarthy is examining or juxtaposing sort of a discussion of whether there is something inherently evil in some human beings, or whether it is something or whether Lester Ballard is a product of his circumstance. At the time of his publication, I think maybe that was ambiguous, but taking this book into context of his later work, I think McCarthy is making the statement that Ballard is not a product of his circumstances, of his environment. There is something inherently evil in him, but nonetheless, he is pitiable. It has a lot of very disturbing scenes and a very weird ending. It's not bad at all, but again, it was one of the McCarthy books that I struggled the most with engaging with. All right, we have to speed this up because this is already getting too long. There's 11 books here, or 12, depending on whether you consider Sarah Maris and The Passenger as one. Next up is Cities of the Plain. It's the third volume in the so-called Border Trilogy. I think it's a pretty good book. It's a very good book, actually. I'm already at the point where I think they're very good. But I think Cities of the Plain is mostly a novel of missed opportunity. I think with this novel, the concept of the Border Trilogy collapses because even though you do have both John Grady Cole and Billy Parham in here, Billy as a character is not really developed here. Nothing of what happens in The Crossing has any bearing on what goes on in Cities of the Plain. And mostly Cities of the Plain, I think, can be viewed as a sequel to All the Pretty Horses. Um, in that sense, it's a great sequel. It's a good story, and there is a very memorable ending and a particularly excruciatingly interesting and good knife fight in here, which is just brilliant. But in terms of how it rounds out the Border trilogy, nah, it 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 just fails a little bit. Next up is No Country for Old Men, which I think everyone knows, at least from the very good movie adaptation by the Coen brothers. I read this novel after I saw the movie, and I think that perhaps has some impact on how you view the novel. Anton Chigurh is personified so excellently in Javier Bardem that when you read about him in the novel, it's really impossible, at least for me, to picture anything other than how Javier Bardem is portraying that character in the movie. It's probably his most approachable work. I think the novel does involve some more interesting aspects to the story than what is in the movie. There's way more focus here on Sheriff Bell. All the chapters in italics is the thoughts and monologues of the sheriff, and this situation, or this sort of um, coming to terms for the sheriff with that he's a man of a certain age and a man of a lost time, and that he doesn't really seem to understand where the world is going, and he sees an evilness and a wickedness and a self-centeredness in younger generation that he cannot recognize, and that all of that is sort of um, taken to an extreme level with Anton Chigurh, who is an agent of chaos, who is an agent of chance. Um, and it's a very good thriller. It's an excellent book in many ways, but it's a bit constrained, I think, or confined to a genre, more so than most of other books by McCarthy. Next up is Suttree, which is also one of his Tennessee novels, following Cornelius Suttree, who's living a life of voluntary exile as an outcast along the Tennessee River, together with drunks and maniacs and other people who are sort of on the fringe of society. This is often said to be the most autobiographical of Cormac McCarthy's work, although I'm not sure if that is actually something that has been examined or proven, or whether he has said something about it, because he's notoriously reclusive, and it just seems to be one of these things that people mention and it gets repeated a lot. But in any case, it's his most humane book. It's his most witty book. There's a excellent character in here, the Midnight Melon Mounter, Gene Harrington, I believe. Harrington? I think so. In any case, there is some scenes in here that are absolutely amazing, and there is a stream of consciousness narrative that is very engrossing, sometimes confusing, but mostly relatively easy to follow. Actually, it does have some loose ends, and it does struggle with actually having some direction, but it's an immersive reading experience that I think is pretty brilliant. Then basically we get to the novels that I would consider top tier McCarthy, and the lowest of the top tier is The Road. The Road is also familiar to most people. It's this dystopian, um, post-apocalyptic novel. Some disaster has happened. Most of the world is covered in ash and burned down. It brings out all the worst in humanity. We follow a father and his son and their survival, basically, or their struggle for survival, and their sort of a metaphorical struggle to carry the light, which is a symbol of goodness, probably of Christianity as well. It has a very sentimental and emotional ending, and it's quite difficult to not tear up when you read that particular ending. It does also have hope in it towards the end, and that's not always, oh, that's actually rarely given in McCarthy novels. So, The Road, pretty good book. Then we get to the first part of the Border trilogy, All the Pretty Horses, a Western novel. John Grady Cole falls in love with a Mexican girl, and it goes on from there. Hemingway-esque in the dialogue. It's just a very engrossing and joyful reading experience. It's masterfully crafted. The prose is excellent. John Grady Cole is a great character. Rawlins is a perfect sidekick. Jimmy Blevins is Jimmy Blevins, and This is also a very approachable book. This is usually the book that I recommend people to start with if they want to read McCarthy, because it showcases a lot of things that he's excellent at an approachable way. So yeah, All the Pretty Horses. And the next is The Crossing, the so-called sequel to All the Pretty Horses. Although, as I mentioned earlier, I think this one is sort of the odd one out in the Border trilogy. I think it's the best of the Border trilogy. It's very different than All the Pretty Horses. So some people who come to the sequel expecting more of the action-packed sort of cowboy style novel that is All the Pretty Horses gets disappointed. But this is way more symbolical, allegorical. It's much more beautiful. It's way more sort of philosophical. There's several monologues in here, and it's a great tragedy. You follow Billy Parham's adventures also around the Border territory, going into Mexico first to get his horse back. I think then to find first to return a wolf, then to get his horse back, and then to find his brother, and nothing ends well. Of course, it's a great book. It's a slow read. It's one of the novels where you really have to slow your pace down and really enjoy the atmosphere. And then we get to my most recently completed novels, and maybe there's recency bias here, but yes, I would consider Stella Maris and The Passenger as one of Cormac McCarthy's greatest books. I consider it one book for the purpose of this video. It is two different books. They can actually be read fairly well independently of each other, but they do complement each other quite well. I think this was published in 2022 when he was 87. He's worked on it since 1980. It's a mix of all that's good about McCarthy. It has some of the humor that has been missing in his published works since Suttree. It has a lot of philosophical topics. It has a forbidden love, and as you would expect, maybe from McCarthy, that forbidden love is sort of uncomfortable. But it's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of dialogue, but that dialogue is brilliant. Bobby Weston, salvage diver, um, consumed with grief over his sister's death. His sister is a mathematical genius. She took her own life. They're both children of a scientist that worked with Oppenheimer on the atomic bomb. So there's so much stuff in these two novels here that is just excellent. It really made me think a lot, and I was actually, even though perhaps The Passenger is the most complete novel, I think in some ways Stella Maris, which focuses on Alicia Weston and this pure dialogue between her and her psychiatrist, I think maybe that's even better than The Passenger. In any case, the two of them together really blew my mind, and it's just I think just amazing novels. Then next up, and my second favorite McCarthy is his second novel, Out of Dark, story of Rintha and what's his name, Collar Home, um, brother and sister. Again, an incestuous relationship. This is a Cain and Abel story. It's filled of biblical allegory. It's full of haunting characters and landscapes that are reflecting and mirroring the inner state of the protagonist, and it's it's a really amazing story that a lot could be said about. But we are approaching 14 minutes, so I will really try to wrap this up. And as no surprise, probably for those who know McCarthy and who has maybe seen my post before, my favorite McCarthy novel is still Blood Meridian. This is the Folio Society edition. Blood Meridian is just a very beautifully written novel about very terrible things. It has the greatest character in literature that I know about, Judge Holden, and it is just, and it's just amazing. I've written separately about this, but it's hard to say that, or really to say something about Blood Meridian that hasn't been said by someone else way better. But this is to me probably my favorite book of all time. It's, I guess, tied with The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, but it's an amazing book, and it's probably the first of McCarthy's books that I will reread eventually, because this was the first one from McCarthy that I read. So there you go. This was a quick ranking of all of Cormac McCarthy's novels. Let me know what you think about this ranking. I think there were some controversial choices, but also some conventional ones, and I would be very happy to hear what you think about it. Thank you.